Yo, what is going on? Welcome. I hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about something specific, which is using samplers, any sampler, to add live instrumentation into your beat, whether you be recording a synth onto it, a guitar, etc. Because one of the reasons I love using samplers isn't just because of the traditional putting a record onto it, chopping it up, and making a beat, which I do love more than anything, but I love how samplers can kind of sometimes change your thought process in how you make music. And that's what I want to get into today a little bit. So let's get right into this. First thing I'm going to do is just make a beat on the MPC, and then we can start working on adding melody to it, but I'll just go through the beat pretty quickly. And the sample I'm going to be chopping up on here to make the beat is one of these 45s I got recently, which I was really into one of the samplers. Here it is here. It's by Booker T and the MGs called Hang 'em High. It's a super basic sample, which I think will give us a lot of space to mess around with some live instruments and add a lot onto it, which is why I want to use it today. So I'll chop this up, we'll get something crazy going. I think I'll probably use a drum break, and then we'll have something we can add on to. So let's do it. So I have the sample recorded onto the MPC. I slowed it down and we're at around 91 BPM. Well, we're at exactly 91 BPM. Here's a little taste of how the sample sounds. As you'll hear, it's really basic. So it gives us this little guitar sample, and we have the bass in the background as well, which I think we might want to just bring up a little bit for this beat. But I'll lay down a drum pattern, add a little sample chop loop on top of that, and then we can keep moving on this beat. Let's do it. I think that sounds super sick, and I think it's given us a lot of space to add on some melody, but I'm going to make another sequence just so we have something else to work with. Let's do it. Alright, so now that we have those two sequences laid down, I think we have a really great jumping off point to start adding some melodies on top of this and get into how we can use a sampler to add melodies onto beats. So I'm thinking because this already has the guitar sound in it, we can go more the synth route. I'll grab the Digitone, hook that up to the MPC, and then we can start adding some sounds into this. Let's do it. So now we've got the Digitone going into the MPC, so as I play notes here, you can hear this coming through the MP. I like this sound for this beat too. It gives it kind of this like spacey-ish vibe. So now let's get into this process of adding a melody onto the beat. First thing I want to do is just go into the Digitone and make sure that this is set to the same key as the beat. I don't know what key the beat is in as of right now, but I'm going to play the beat and set this to major scale. And now all we have to do is change the scale key until all the notes sound like they're in the same key as the beat. So I'm going to play that now. So right now, just from kind of messing around, I can tell that this B is going to be in the same key as the beat for sure. Same with this one. Same with the A. Same with this E, it sounds like. So let's turn this up a little bit. And that sounds like it's matching really well. So this D major scale is where we're going to want to be with this beat. So now that I have this all set up, this is where the process kind of takes place. So I'm going to go into the sampler and I'm going to record myself kind of improvising and messing around on the Digitone. I'm not going to worry too much if something sounds off or I make a bit of a mistake. I'm just going to keep recording, and then once we have that improv recorded, then we can start working on the MPC. The other thing I like to keep in mind when I'm doing this process and I'm recording the sample, it's nice to have some long tailing notes. So rather than doing something like this, where it's very frequent notes, every once in a while you want to have that tailed off note at the end of your sort of improvisation run. So it'd be something like this. Things like that. So I'll play the beat, record the sample on top of it, then we can mess with it. Let's do it. Okay, that should be good. I recorded just over a minute. And now that we have that, I'm just going to move this to the side. We may want to go back to it. And now what we want to do from this point on is get out of our musician performance brain and go into our sample chopping, editing, sound design brain. Because what I love about using the MPC or any sampler, and I've done this with guitars, pianos, synths, when you can take your own playing and chop it up on a sampler and rearrange it the same way you would with a record or another sample, it puts you into this place where you almost get the best of both worlds, where you can come up with melodies on your instruments that you wouldn't necessarily think of by actually playing them in, because you're taking the things that you're improvising and kind of flipping them on their head. And that's not just going to come from chopping up the sample and finding different chops within what we just recorded, but it's also going to be how we can manipulate it afterwards. So now that we have elements of a melody, we can completely rearrange it and use the different part of our brain to try to come up with something that'll fit the beat. So I'm going to take a bunch of these little runs that I did on the Digitone and lay them across the pads. And I'm not necessarily going to chop right at the beginning of an improvised run. It may just be something that sounds cool or something that sticks out as interesting to go onto this beat. So let's chop it up. So now that we have that performance chopped up onto a new program, let's play the beat, mess around with the pads, and see if we can kind of come up with something interesting with what we just played. The other thing to consider is that we recorded all of this in the correct key. So if we want to try messing around with the pitches, what we can do is turn this down an entire octave. So if we go to the program editor, I'll turn this down 12 semitones. And then we may be able to pull out some sounds the same way I like to do when using other types of samples. So I just turned that down a full octave. Now let's mess around with it and see how it sounds. I'm also just going to turn down the program a little bit because it's cutting through a little bit too much. The other thing that's nice about cranking the pitch down on this is any small timing errors I made will be accentuated, and it gives us this interesting timing and gives us even more of something that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of playing when I was just performing it. I find the key to adding melodies onto sample beats as well is to not go too far with it. For me personally, I like when these types of things are a bit more textural than they are at the forefront of the beat and what you should really be paying attention to. So I'm going to make sure this is sitting way in the back, and I'm actually going to add some effects onto this just so it kind of blends it in even a little bit more and pushes it even further back. So let's go into the program and then we'll add some different effects onto this. Okay, I like these melodies that we've added, and I think this beat is in a pretty solid spot. The one thing I want to do is, rather than just recording in a bass line like we typically would, because the bass is so prominent within this sample, I'm thinking we can just boost that up a little bit and get a little bit more out of it. So I'm just going to EQ the actual sample program to see if I can pull that out, and then we'll have it hitting a little bit harder. Let's see what we can do. And with that, I think that wraps it up for this beat. I appreciate you so much as always for hanging out and making music. And I hope this video showed that recording live instruments into samplers can really kind of shift up and change how you think about rearranging melodies, etc. But if you liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. Thank you so much. Peace.